I'm going to be talking to you today about the psychology of the disorder and specifically about different aspects of cognitive functioning, social cognitive functioning, emotional functioning, dysfunctional beliefs, and some models of cognitive processing in people with schizophrenia. To start in our discussion of the cognitive elements of schizophrenia, it's important to think a little bit about the history of our understanding of the cognitive deficits in people with schizophrenia. We talked before in the history segment about one of the first psychiatrists who really defined the disorder schizophrenia for the first time. That was Emil Kraepelin. Kraepelin, in his initial discussions of schizophrenia and his initial descriptions of it, noted that people with schizophrenia often had difficulties focusing their attention, and they also had difficulties in remembering things. And these were major aspects of Kraepelin's model of schizophrenia. Kraepelin was very attuned to these cognitive difficulties. And I should also say that when I say cognitive, I'm talking about disruptions in the ability to pay attention, to remember things, to maybe manipulate information in my mind. So to sort of take, for example, a string of numbers, put them backwards in my mind. Those types of sort of concentration tasks are what I mean when I talk about cognitive skills. Kraepelin, in this initial model, was very influenced by psychologists by the name of Wilhelm Wundt, who is considered to be the first experimental psychologist. He started the first experimental psychology lab in 1879 in Leipzig, Germany. Kraepelin worked in Wundt's lab, and as a result became very familiar with experimental psychological techniques that were being used at that time. He became very interested in psychological assessment, the use of tests, standardized tests to assess sort of psychological constructs or skills. And he took this training that he got from Wundt into his own research career as he pursued it in Munich for many years after. So Kraepelin, in his initial description of schizophrenia, which he of course called dementia praecox, talked about these deficits in attention and memory and problem solving, deficits in cognition. Bleuler, in turn, who first gave us the actual name of schizophrenia, described one of the key aspects of schizophrenia as being related to ambivalence. It's one of what has been called Bleuler's 4 A's. And the idea of ambivalence is that people with schizophrenia have severe disruptions in their motivation, their ability to carry out activities. So from Kraepelin, we get this idea of people with schizophrenia having deficits in attention, memory, and problem solving. And from Bleuler, we get this idea of severe motivational deficits in many people with the disorder, making it very hard for them to follow through on activities, to be motivated to accomplish goals. So given this history, it's been pretty clear that over the last 20 to 30 years, we've had a real explosion of research in cognition and affect in schizophrenia. What's interesting about these findings is in many ways, they're presaged by some of Bleuler's own descriptions of the disorder. So I'm going to read for you now a quote from Bleuler that actually presages many of the ideas that I'll be talking about in the lecture today. So this is a direct quote from Bleuler's book, Dementia Praecox, and it goes as follows. Therefore, if one wants to speak of intellectual dementia in our patients, one must express oneself approximately as follows. The schizophrenic is not generally demented, but he is demented with regard to certain periods, to certain constellations, and to certain complexes. In mild cases, the defective functions are the exception. In most severe cases, those who sit around in our mental institutions taking no part in anything, the defective functions are the rule. The mildest case can commit as great a piece of folly as the most severe, but he commits it far more rarely. So in this quote, there are really 3 crucial ideas that are encapsulated about cognitive difficulties in people with schizophrenia. Number 1, the deficits are widespread. They're deficits in a variety of different areas. Number 2, there is great heterogeneity, with some people with schizophrenia having severe deficits in cognition, other people with schizophrenia having very mild deficits or no deficits at all in cognition. And number 3, the idea that deficits in cognition have a close relationship to functional outcome. Bleuler saying that those with the most severe deficits are the one that we find in our mental institutions. So in that one quote, Bleuler gets across three of the real crucial ideas concerning cognition and schizophrenia.